I called the governor's office 3 times to find out what they thought about the beer, if they liked it, if they thought it was funny, or if they were even going to try it. It looks like this intersection can be shut down at any time. There's flames from one end of the horizon all the way to the other end. His RV's engine started revving up and shot in this direction. He jumped this curb, went right by this water meter, and went straight through that window. This parking lot looks like a junkyard. The hospital behind me is in shambles, and people are just now starting to arrive, amazed at the destruction the tornadoes did last night. One of the things the city wants to do in its new tree management plan is increase the canopy throughout the city. That means adding new trees to public places. If you put up a memorial and it's in the right-of-way, you have to go by ACHD rules. But if your memorial is on private property, no rules apply and it can stay as long as you want. This is the first house that Matthew Scott has built. He hopes eventually they'll look something like this and there'll be a whole row of them in a micro-community. Matthew's camera also picked up the Subaru coming from that direction, but that camera didn't show up as well as the other one did. The sheriff says that in 2009 there was a bond election here in Canyon County to put a jail on this land here on Highway 2026 and Pond Lane. Now this jail would hold at least 2,000 inmates, but the voters turned it down.
Eric Gonzales continues our team coverage on the roadway. He's live in Boise.
Well, as we've been here in the last 10 seconds, we've gotten one slide off, as you can see right behind me. Snow's coming down pretty good right now. It's wet, it's starting to pile up, and just as we're about to go on air, you get one slide off. This gentleman's trying to get back on the road. ISP says that they haven't had too many major crashes tonight, but a lot of minor slide-offs like this one, and as you can see, there's still a lot of traffic out there. How would you feel if you went to the cemetery to visit your loved one only to find that that wasn't them? Well, that's what happened to 4 families here at Fort Sam Houston Cemetery. Patty Jordan says her house has always been a duplex. This side has its own entrance and its own address. This side has a different address and its own entrance. It looks like a duplex, but the city of Nampa says this whole area is zoned for only single-family housing. These court documents that I obtained state that Jamie Winterstein shot Douglas West inside this house on Friday night here in Ontario. The documents also say that after West was shot, he ran down this sidewalk where he eventually collapsed in that driveway. The city says they have jurisdiction over the right-of-way, which is where this meter is. ACHD says they have jurisdiction over the street. But the problem is the city put in these sensors to work with the meters. As winds picked up on Highway 78 near Murphy, the flames from the Soda fire came roaring to life and sped down Wilson Creek Road. Several houses were in the path of the fire, and that's when the Canyon County Sheriff started going door to door.
We've got 2 houses that are in complete danger right now. The fire's right behind us, so we're asking these people to evacuate. Obviously, we cannot make them leave. We are highly encouraging them to move out.
Even though one homeowner could see the fire blasting in her backyard, she wasn't leaving yet.
Back there, that's all dry. We have this mobile home and we have these trees and fences, and that catches fire. We could get in big trouble.
Ranchers started loading up livestock as fire crews were working around them to save their land. Are you going to stay?
Yes, I'm going to stay.
And everybody's been very cooperative and leaving when they can leave.
Finally, ISP had to shut down Highway 78. Flames and smoke were taking over, and air crews could barely see their mark. Sheriff Donahue says no houses were damaged at Wilson Creek Road, but neighbors were ready to launch as the fire moved on.
Because I already hooked the trailer up and I'm ready to leave, so if I have to go, I gotta go.
As for the Canyon County Sheriff, he says he's helping out his Owyhee County neighbors.
Really, it's just about law enforcement, helping law enforcement, not just that, but helping our neighbors here in Owyhee County. They're in a heck of a bad spot right now. There's been a true disaster for them. So
the Owyhee County Sheriff is asking people if they can stay away from the intersection of Highway 45 and 78. There is one section that is still closed off due to fire activity. Live near Murphy, I'm Eric Gonzales, KBOI2 News.
It was my responsibility to get her ready and get her to school, and you know, I failed in that responsibility a couple of times.
What 6-year-old Brooke doesn't understand is why she's in detention. eating lunch alone and away from her friends, looking at nothing but a wall.
And she kept asking, what did I do wrong?
Brooke was late to school several times, but her parents take all the blame. With a newborn baby at home, getting Brooke to school on time has been a struggle. So after 3 tardies, Olympia Elementary School enforced its new policy on Brooke. 1 hour detention after school or detention during lunch.
This just happens to be one of the consequences for being tardy at that particular campus.
The policy is she has to sit by herself on a desk against the wall, facing the wall, not with her friends.
Judson Independent School District says that each school has their own policy, and this one wasn't meant to punish the student, but since they started it, it's worked.
They have been able to cut down the number of tardies way back, as much as 90 to 95% of the tardies.
Still, the parents want Olympia Elementary to look at the exception and not the rule. They believe the policy should be changed to punish the parents and not the kids.
She said it was mommy and daddy. And I told her that sometimes adults make policies and rules that aren't necessarily fair.
Brooke's father, he felt bad and sat with his daughter one day during detention.
Told her that, we were sorry and, it wasn't going to happen again.
Eric Gonzales, KENS 5 Eyewitness News.
Well, we asked our Facebook friends, do you think the school should punish kids who have no control over getting to school on time?
It's called a through turn.
ACHD has new plans for State Street and Veterans Memorial Parkway. They want to eliminate left turns in both directions on State Street at that intersection.
So basically, cars that want to turn left are actually diverted a little bit further down the block.
I'm not the quickest blade in the blender, so I asked Nicole Pineda from ACHD to give me a run-through to make sure I got it down for my story.
Going.
Intersection, and I want to turn left, so
Okay.
I can't turn left right there.
Right. No turning left there. We're going to go straight up just a little ways more. Then we'll stop and wait for the signal to give us the go-ahead. Then we'll go around a median and back out. And so then the opposite direction, down State, and we'll take a...
Perfect.
Yes, that is extremely complicated. And the drivers in this town, they're going to be all messed up.
To make a left turn, you're going to have to go through 2 lights and make a left and a right. Is that what's going to happen?
I do see what you're saying.
She even had to show me on paper.
We want to take a left here onto Veterans.
ACHD says the new intersections have been proven to be safer than left turn lanes and will save time by up to 50% during rush hour traffic by having no left turns.
It's not that far out of your way. It's a little inconvenient. I like the idea.
These court documents I obtained say this woman in this picture refused to make her bed and was cussing at jailers. The deputies put the woman in a holding cell trying to calm her down, but instead the conflict turned physical, and the man who reported it says he was fired for speaking out. Former Elmore County Deputy Jason Mitleider says he loved training new hires at the jail. He also taught continuing education for senior staff members. The 32-year-old was a jailer on duty that night. The woman who we'll call Emily was yelling at jailers after being arrested.
If an inmate's upset, the first thing that we did, the standard operating procedure, was to shut the door and let them cool down. In this case, he chose not to do that.
Take a look at this video with Sergeant Tom Robeson at the door of the holding cell.
He's instructing her to sit down. She goes and pushes the intercom. He pushes her across the cell. Another deputy comes to respond, and then I come in and I gain control of the inmate and turn her around and restrain her.
An investigation by the Elmore County Sheriff's Office found Emily's body and head hit the wall. You can see she sits down and starts rocking back and forth. According to the department policy, the staff person using physical force and the inmate against whom the force was used will receive immediate medical attention. But Emily doesn't see a doctor for another 3 hours. Was she crying after this happened?
Absolutely.
The defense says she wasn't hurt. After a couple of days, Mitleider, a current soldier in the Army National Guard, reports what happened to his captain. In these court documents, Captain Lynn McCallum says that he talked to the sergeant about the incident, but he felt it wasn't that big of a deal, so he didn't file a report as required by policy. He says the sergeant didn't mean to push the inmate, and this type of thing happens here at the jail all the time. After that, nothing was done. So about 3 weeks later, Mittliner went up the chain of command, contacting Elmore County investigators. During that same time, court records show that Robeson showed the video to several jailers. One deputy stated that Robeson told her something to the effect, "You need to do that from time to time to get them to shut up."
This is something that he did several times over the following weeks, showing people this video. He thought it was funny.
But that's not what Robeson told investigators. In these court documents, Robeson told the investigator on February 6, 2013, that Emily was refusing to follow his commands, and in order to get her to sit down, he felt it was necessary to assist her in sitting down. In that same interview, Robeson said the reason Emily flew back so far was because he was trying to catch his balance, and when he started going forward, he ended up losing his balance. Soon after the investigation ended, Robeson and his supervisor, Captain McCallum, were placed on leave. So you weren't worried that you were going to lose your job when you...
I knew it was a possibility. I knew that it was possible.
A few weeks later, Mittliner was fired. Why did they tell you that you were fired?
Using profanity in the jail.
Was that one incident?
That was the incident they fired me for.
Mittliner admits he did cuss in jail. He says the following Monday, after he was fired, Sergeant Robeson was back at work.
He still works there, and I don't.
Robeson pleaded guilty to misdemeanor disturbing the peace and was sentenced to 5 days in jail or 100 hours of community service. I asked him to talk, but he wouldn't comment. Robeson's attorney says there's more to the story that isn't on the tape.
The problem in this case is that the video is just one little picture, one little portion of what happened. It doesn't show her kicking and screaming, combative with other deputies as she's coming down the hall. And she has a long history of doing this and a long history of assaults on law enforcement officers.
Mittliner loved his job as a jailer, but is jaded about how it all turned out.
I have nothing but respect for what they do, but I think I'm ready to move on with my life.
Emily has pages and pages of convictions on her record, including battery on an officer and violating a no-contact order. We tried contacting her several times, but never heard back. Sergeant Robeson was reduced in rank to deputy following this investigation. Off 84 near the Boise stage stop, you'll find a dairy farm and a little piece of history.
These are the markers to send airmail to Boise area.
Ask Castle and his friend Frank Brady any question about the history of airmail, and they'll likely have the answer. That includes the story behind this huge arrow on Castle's property.
This used to be the old highway, and it was a tracking system to Boise Airport.
You see, not only does he know about the history of airmail, but both him and his friend Frank both know flying too. Both of them are pilots, and Castle's been flying for 40-some-odd years, long after these big cement arrows were set in the ground.
It was the first airmail we had in the United States, the old airplanes, and we didn't have the guidance system we have today.
Clear for takeoff, make an early left turn out.
Back in the 1920s, the United States Postal Service started the first airmail system. In those days, there were no charts, no radios, and no GPS. All a pilot had was his eyeballs and these arrows that were painted yellow. Ron's Uncle Rex even used these arrows back in the day to fly his airmail routes. At one time, this whole cement slab used to be yellow. You can see it on the sides. It may not look like much right now, but it's only from the air that you can really tell what it looks like. After many calls to historians and flyers, I found not a lot of people know the story behind these arrows.
Have you ever seen any of these before? No, this is actually the first one I've actually found.
But David Moeller knows them well. He says the Postal Service put these arrows down every 10 miles from New York to San Francisco.
Each one just points right straight to the next, so you just keep finding them.
I knew it was here, but I didn't know where it was here.
And if you're wondering what Castle's arrows are pointing to, he knows.
The old BSU campus is now. That was the Boise Airport where the BSU campus is.
Each arrow laid across the country had a flashing light beacon that pilots would look for and then follow.
This is where the tower was at that the beacon light was mounted on.
The arrow's been on Castle's land for more than 90 years, and he plans on keeping it together as long as he can.
It's part of our history. It's part of our aviation history.
It's neat. It should be preserved. Put the tower back on it. Put the light back on it.
Even though the yellow's faded and the lights are gone, it's not just a cement slab to some flyers.
I will not let anybody destroy it or move it. It's a historical monument, I feel.
Eric Gonzales, KBOI 2 News.